Oh.
Hello, everybody, and apologies for the delay. We'll be starting very shortly. Hello and good afternoon, friends. My name is Nada Salha and I'm part of the KHDA family. Again, sincere apologies for that. We had a bit of a technical issue, but we're here, we're alive, and we're doing well. So I'm here, part of the KHDA family, and I'm here to help bring to you our 12th What Works X webinar today, as week 12, coincidentally, is the week of where distance learning comes to an end. We'll be using the Menti platform as a way to engage with all of you fantastic viewers today. So please go to menti.com and enter the code you see on your screen, 221716. Give you a minute to do that. And you'll see there on your screen, just for fun, so you can get used to a little bit with the Menti platform. I want you to imagine the world found a solution to this very unfortunate virus, this pandemic, and you could suddenly travel again. What sort of holiday would you like to go on? I think many of us desperately would like to travel at the moment. The summer's coming up, it's getting quite hot. So why not? Let's just dream a little bit and imagine we're able to travel again and see this beautiful, more of this beautiful world that we live in. I can see that mountains are ahead. That's my ideal holiday, coincidentally. Mountain fresh air, I think, would do us all fantastically well. Or even a staycation in Dubai. Those awesome resorts we have across the country, across this beautiful country of the UAE. So many fantastic resorts and opportunities to stay in the country and enjoy the fantastic hotel facilities. Well, thank you so much for that. Thanks for entertaining me there. That's great. So to all you wonderful educators out there, I hope you all get to take these holidays again really soon. You certainly do deserve a break. And on behalf of all of us at KHDA, we'd like to express our heartfelt thanks to all the great work you are doing to support the continuation of learning. So God bless you all, and thank you so much for everything that you do. So now coming to What Works. In 2012, a movement known as What Works began and would come to change the culture of education in Dubai. It was a series of events that was anchored in a strength-based approach and was focused on collaboration. What Works X is the same concept, just the platform changes, and perhaps with the support of technology, it allows for even more teachers to participate and share what is working with their own schools. And moving on to today's webinar, how to prepare students of determination for their return for the return to their school campus and support their well-being during the transition. This presentation will be provided by Sarah from 4 Mark School, so we really do appreciate her volunteering her time to join us today and share her story and her school's journey during distance learning. Today's presentation will be followed by a Q&A discussion, which will be facilitated by my awesome colleague Magnus. And unfortunately, webinars on the Teams platform does not allow verbal interactions with the audience. But please do ask your questions throughout the presentation by submitting your questions in the chat Q&A feature to the right of your screen, ensuring that your questions are on topic. And the wonderful Maya is there at the back end to moderate the questions coming through on the chat features. I'll be back to close the session at the end of the webinar and to seek your quick feedback using menti.com again. For now, I'll pass on to my colleague Magnus to introduce the presenter for today. Thank you, Magnus.
Thank you, Nada. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. Hi there. It is my pleasure to introduce our presenter today. Her name is Sarah Vandam. She is the head of inclusion for 4 Mark School here in Dubai. And Sarah has been kind enough to put together a presentation for us, which Nada just mentioned. Talks about how to prepare students of determination for the return to their school campus and support their well-being during the transition. As we plan for the eventual return to school, it is important to address the struggles that some children may face transitioning back to campus, as well as supporting children who have experienced anxiety during this time of change. Now, our presenter today, Sarah, she is originally from Solihull in the UK, where she worked for 5.5 years for a local charity, providing respite care to families and social and leisure activities for individuals of determination. Sarah has taught in many different mainstream and special schools in England, whilst completing her undergraduate degree and PGCE. Sarah later began teaching Key Stage 2 in an outstanding special school in Birmingham. To Dubai, Sarah came 4 years ago, initially working as an inclusion teacher and acting head of inclusion. And as the head of inclusion at 4 Mark, she works closely with teachers, therapists, parents, to ensure all learners are able to access the curriculum and maximize their potential. So, without further ado, on behalf of all of us, I'd like to hand over the word to Sarah and her presentation. Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Magnus. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
So, as Magnus said, I am from 4 Mark School. We are a Repton prep school and we follow or we teach the British curriculum. We currently run from FS1 to Year 8 and have about 540 pupils. Around 10% of those are students with additional needs and students of determination. Our inclusion department is made up of myself, an inclusion teacher and 3 learning support assistants. As well as that, we have 7 individual learning support assistants. So today I'm just briefly going to talk to you about thinking about transition back to school, the challenges that have been presented to us all as a result of distance learning, the support that we have put in place throughout and the support that will continue to support children back to school, and to discuss briefly wellbeing and anxiety and how to further address the needs and support the children in September. So before anything else, preparation is the key to success. Like any time after a summer holidays or preparing a transition back to school, it is important for teachers to communicate with each other and pass along information that they may need to know about particular students. Given the current situation, children are going to be coming back to school having a very different few months than usual. So we need to make sure we provide extra time, allowing them to understand our instructions and questions, and extra time to build positive relationships with the new staff, a new teacher, the new children in their class if they have that. And also, hopefully in our school, I know we're going to be having familiar adults to support the children who might need it. So members of the inclusion department will still continue to support. As always, you can use visuals, put the structure back in place from the start, have your firm boundaries and constantly praise. praise based on effort and praise even the smallest of things. So as a result of distance learning, we have seen a lack of socialisation. Lots of children are in very different situations at home, so their home life situations are different, and we don't know about that and how they will be when they come back to school. I know some children at our school, they have a lot of siblings, and therefore the older ones are helping out, looking after the younger ones, or maybe in some families we see the parents focusing and supporting the older ones, and then the younger children have missed out a bit. So it's really important to try and engage an understanding of how the past few months have been for children, so you can try and identify any gaps in learning. Some children will have had the loss of routine and structure. I know a day at home probably is not going to look the same as school. You know, we come in, we line up outside the classroom, and all those things that children know prepare them for work have not been in place. Some children are working towards a reduced timetable, working flexibly to complete core subjects and maybe IEP targets. So there's going to be a big jump when we come back to school, and also the lack of freedom. I know some children with medical issues or those with siblings with medical issues may not have left the house for months. So thinking about all of this and having spoken to parents, they are seeing an increase in frustrations and irritability at home. Children are struggling to regulate their emotion and cope with sensory difficulties. Some are having new and challenging behaviours, some that parents haven't seen before. And on top of all this, we have seen a rise in anxiety. So throughout distance learning, we had to try and adapt the support that we put in place in school, and try and continue as much of that to support parents teaching at home. So we have a 24-hour pastoral support system, and we have Zoom drop-ins with class teachers. We have familiar adults such as learning support assistants, individual learning support assistants and TAs, providing support, whether that's through Shobi, which is our online platform, or through one-to-one or small group sessions in Zoom. LSAs and TAs are also continuing reading support and interventions, any EAL support that would have happened in school, and also our pastoral support. We are running all the sessions that we ran in school just through Zoom. We also work very closely and communicate with the families to discuss strategies that work for us with the children in school. We've sent home individualised resources so that they can set up workstations and try and have a distinguished area for work at home. We also have continued growth mindset sessions with certain children, and we always use social stories to help children understand all the change or worries at this time. If children are still really struggling, we can then sometimes refer them to outside agencies for extra support. So our first case study is a little boy with undiagnosed learning difficulties and anxiety. So in school, he completes differentiated curriculum work and has small group and one-to-one interventions that mainly focus on developing social skills as well as academic support. He frequently complained of illness and pains. However, when he was in school, he was always happy. Since starting distance learning, this boy has found it very challenging. He's extremely worried and anxious about COVID-19, and work has been a struggle to do at home. So he is working on a reduced timetable, just completing core subjects, as well as IEP target work through Zoom with myself. And then other LSAs, Zoom, and the little boy has support for social skills still, and also the academic support to help him complete the core subjects. So we're working really closely with this family, but we now need to think about transitioning back to school. So we've spoke to the parents about trying to organise some play dates before returning to school. And then closer to the time, we spoke about working with them to try and implement some routine back in place, whether that's asking the family to sort out bedtimes and ensure that the little boy can get up in time for school. Maybe he'll have his breakfast at the time he would before school, and have snacks and lunch at the same time as we would in school, to try and put that routine back in place to help him transition. Before coming to school, he will have a Zoom with his new teacher, and he can make a little pack to share some of his favourite things with his new teacher, maybe talk to the new teacher about what he wants to see more of when he returns to school, and have a very positive session to hopefully help him familiarise himself with the new teacher. Also, when we return to school, we're lucky that he has had so much support from people like myself and LSAs, so we'll all be around to support the transition. We can work with the new teacher to fill in any information that they need to know and strategies that work as we hand over the pupil passports and most recent IEPs. This child also responds well to social stories and the use of pictures. So we'll use social stories to talk about the return to school, and right before we come back to school, when we know a little bit more about how it's going to look, or when we do know, we can start those discussions with the child and the family. So we might discuss that there might be less children in the classroom, or when we're at school we still need to remember to wash our hands. We can show the little boy pictures of the school being cleaned and talk through those things to hopefully acknowledge and validate any worries he has, and then talk through how we're going to address that with him at school. So I'm just going to pause now for the midpoint Menti question.
If you could share with us your thoughts, Sarah, thank you.
So I just wanted to see how you feel, how confident you feel in identifying signs and symptoms of anxiety. I know from working with teachers in the past that sometimes there might be misconceptions about some of the symptoms, about how if a child is experiencing anxiety, sometimes they might want to get out of doing things or often look for excuses as to not do certain things in school. So sometimes these can be misunderstood for laziness or maybe bad behaviour, but really we want to just have a good look at those signs and see. But I'm quite impressed. Seems like some of you, half of you nearly feel very confident, some of you somewhat, and just a few of you a little confident to identify those. So over the next couple of slides, I'll talk to you a little bit more about some of the signs and symptoms associated with anxiety. So anxiety is usually caused by three things, which are uncertainty, lack of control, and perception of danger. So all these three things at the moment are obviously impacted by the current pandemic, and all of those things can cause anxiety. So if a child's constantly complaining of headaches or tummy pains, maybe they have poor sleep or they really struggle to fall asleep. They might be avoiding things or overthinking. You might see a loss of appetite or feeling irritable. There might be panic attacks, worrying about past events, sweating, or muscle tensions. If you see any of these things, obviously they might be an indication of anxiety, and it's important to be aware of this and always think that these thoughts and feelings that children have may display like that in their bodies, such as pains or irritability, and then it may cause a certain behaviour. So if you're seeing new or challenging behaviours on return, there may be some underlying worries. It's also important to remember that it is normal for children to show mixed emotions at this time. The return to school, it is going to be a nerve-wracking time. It's going to be exciting for some, but it's also going to be nerve-wracking and challenging for some as well. So we want to remember all these things and think that, we might see a bit more frustration or irritability, and that is normal. But then there's some things that won't be normal, such as constant crying or extreme worries. So these are things that we need to be aware of as we know the children, and then notice any differences to communicate with families and identify any underlying worries. So, we have a little girl who was in a good routine at school, and she responded really well to her teacher and individual learning support assistant. She used a daily visual timetable, and in school she had social skills, target groups, and IEP work also. At home, she has struggled to concentrate and is showing increased frustration, irritability, and challenging behaviours that haven't been seen before. We've been working really closely with the family throughout distance learning to try and put things in place to help. We have adapted the timetable, so she is also on a reduced timetable, just studying core subjects and also completing work for her IEP targets. Moving forward and thinking about returning to school, this is really important that the new teacher takes time to build a positive relationship with this child. This little girl responds really well to you if you take the time to build a relationship with her, talk about her interests with her, and show her that you can play with her and do the fun side of things with her until then she'll be ready to listen to you. So it's really important that the teacher gets to know her likes and interests and speaks to the previous teacher about that on transition. Again, like the other child, we're working with the parents, and before the return to school, a routine will be put in place. Also, again, there'll be support from familiar adults. The child will be having a new individual learning support assistant, but as long as we ensure that everyone communicates with each other, then all of the information will be passed along. We also use social stories to help the child understand everything that is changing at the moment. Because this child has sensory processing difficulties and is really struggling to regulate her emotions at home, we need to start thinking about communicating with the OT who has been supporting via teletherapy. So when we come back to school, we can use sensory breaks throughout the day. After completing work, she can complete her heavy work exercises or things as directed by the OT at school. She can also take a break in our sensory room. On return to school, as the structure has affected her, it's important that that structure is put back into place. She will receive an individualised timetable, and then as the new teacher gets to know her, she can pick up on signs of this child feeling stressed or becoming irritable, and hopefully intervene before it reaches a meltdown point, whether that's asking her to go and get a book to read while she calms down, or sending her on a little jog to get her up and walking to the printer, say. And then hopefully when she comes back, she will be a bit calmer. So on the return to school, we've thought at our school about a few things which we can do a little bit differently as to what we would do usually. So the first day back, it might be a little bit different, and we're going to focus on wellbeing and looking at all the children's experiences. So we're going to offer all the children a questionnaire. The questions might be asking children if they've been told about washing their hands and wearing the masks and things, and if they understand why they're doing that. We might want to know who's been leaving the house during the last few months, or if people have still taken it quite, staying in and not going out as much. Maybe they have a sibling with medical issues. So we want to know what sort of situation the children have been in. We're going to have a worry box in the classrooms and a feeling board also. Our social skills intervention groups will start up running straight away when we return to school. And then from the results from the questionnaire and worry box, we might have some common concerns or some common worries that we can then address. Any red flags or common threads we can address during circle times. We want to keep the dialogue open. We're going to acknowledge the children's worries. We can talk to them about it, validate their worries, and then during circle time, we can problem solve together. So it's always really good to throw it out to other children to see their thoughts on how they might overcome that, and then together you can problem solve and hopefully help some of the children in their worries. And we also will be offering our growth mindset resilience sessions, and we are going to look at implementing some form of mindfulness into our curriculum. Anybody that's still really struggling outside of that support, we may tailor specific interventions within our department and our pastoral department at school. So this might involve work with school LSAs, or myself, it might be one-to-one work or small group work. And if anybody is still really struggling from there, we can always refer them for further specialist support. The new IEP plans may look a little bit different when we return. Some of the targets might need to focus on transitioning back. As like the two case studies I have discussed with you, both of those children are on reduced timetables. So this is already going to be maybe difficult for some children. And I know some children of ours are just doing really short bits of activity, maybe 5-10 minutes of work followed by 5-10 minutes of choice or reward. So it's going to be a gradual build up, because we can't expect them to have been doing that at home to come back and sit for a 40-minute or an hour lesson in school. Also, as it's been the parents helping them on the previous IEPs, we need to consider the parent feedback. as they're the ones who have worked with them, so they can be involved or have some input in where they think or what they think might be important to be on the new plan when we return to school. So everyone who was involved previously, maybe the previous teacher and any member of the inclusion team that works with him, can all discuss that together and put some new plans in place. Speaking to the parent and the previous teacher, we might be able to address any gaps in learning. Maybe there was something they found particularly challenging at home and the parents sort of stopped teaching that, so now they're asking us to fill in those gaps. So we can write these things down and start those sessions to try and address the gaps in learning. Due to the situation and the lack of socialisation and the difficult time, as we mentioned, with anxiety and worrying, they might have social and emotional targets. And we will have structured social skills groups where adults can model and lead play initially while they step back and then let the children play. These are things we've always done for children who need it anyway, but now we just might have some more children in the groups. They may have a behavioural target, and we need to be really flexible as things might change. So, like I said, be prepared to be flexible, and even the best made plans can change, and that is okay. This is a strange and challenging time for us all. Lots of children, not just those with additional needs, may struggle with something. Teachers may also find it challenging. Talk to the previous class teacher, head of years, therapists, the inclusion team and parents to understand and implement the best support possible. The more research and the more preparation you do to know and understand the child, the better you will be to support them. It's also important to be aware that the children coming back to school due to these worries and anxieties that they may be feeling, they may be coming back in a more flight or fright state. Usually they might have higher tolerance for things, but now coming back, they might be really nervous and little things might be triggering them. So it's important to pick up on these things quickly so we can think about ways to de-escalate situations or put things in place to help children feel comfortable being back at school. Thank you.
Magnus, over to you.
My mic was on mute. Sorry. Thank you so much, Sarah, for that lovely presentation. We are now going to move on to the Q&A bit of this webinar. And in the registration forms that you've all filled out prior to this webinar, many of you have submitted questions that I will pose to Sarah. I'm also going to try and include some of your live questions that I see that you're posting here on the right-hand side in the chat feature. But let's kick this off with our first question, Sarah. The title is Supporting Physical or Social Distancing. A lot of our questions that come in, they relate to physical distancing. How can we ensure proper distancing when we are working closely with children of determination? Essentially not to touch anything, not to shake hands, wash their hands and carry sanitizers with them. Please share your thoughts and tips.
Okay. I think it's interesting how it's going to pan out, and it's important to see, we don't know how many children are going to be in the classroom when we come back and things like that. But the more we talk to children and prepare them about these things, the more they understand. I've seen good social stories on social distancing. It's very hard for children who sometimes, don't understand personal space to understand now social distancing. So we need to talk to them and prepare them about these things, maybe through the use of social stories or picture prompt cards. As well as, social distancing, they need to be taught and told about the importance of not putting things in their mouth or maybe not touching their face and washing their hands. So if that can be built into the structure or the timetable of their day, maybe at certain points to wash their hands, and with, the teacher can wash their hands as well, or if there's a one-to-one there, they can carry hand sanitizer and visual prompt cards to try and remind them. But I do think it will be an interesting situation because obviously, especially children who have individual learning support assistants, it's going to be quite difficult to social distance. And I know for some children at our school as well, that if they're struggling to wear masks and things, if they have a favourite teddy, sometimes we show them, look, here's Brian wearing his mask and his gloves because he wants to go outside and be safe. And if you can use things that they like or try and do it like that slowly with them, then hopefully they will be able to understand a little bit more.
Is this something that you recommend for parents to possibly work with children during the summer month, just to prepare them? Yeah.
Yeah, and if teachers or whoever out there has any extra support, you know, I've started sending social stories through to parents to begin to prepare. And we've spoken about these things in the routine, so as much advice as schools can give to help them prepare, because I think sometimes parents panic and think, oh, we shouldn't talk to them about that because I don't want them to hear about it. But obviously the more you talk to children about it, the better they understand, and then they'll understand why we're doing these things, and they'll know what we have to do when we go back to school and the rules or the new rules that they're expected to follow.
Thank you, I agree. Another question is reopening strategies, making the school a safe environment. With regard to children with determination, when returning to school, share with us some different approaches or protocols that you see feasible, keeping in mind obstacles that might exist for students, such as fear and rise of anxiety levels. For example, do you suggest bringing the kids in intervals?
Yeah, I don't really know how it's going to look, but I have heard of a blended approach. You know, there's been talks of having maybe half in on the morning and half in on the afternoon. At format, we have smaller class sizes anyway, so for us that might be 10 in a class at a time. It would be 10 or less if it was half. So that would be more feasible. I know with children with special needs or with younger children, certainly in FS in year 1, I think the social distancing will be very hard. So it is for them to understand, and you know, might be excited to see each other, and they're going to want to probably go in and play with everything in an FS classroom set. So we just need to be speaking to them and preparing them for that. Again, you know, to washing your hands and not putting all the toys in your mouth, but the more that parents can talk to them about it and prepare them for that now, the better.
Thank you. And what can schools be mindful of? Supporting parents, as you just mentioned, creating a safe and secure environment. Equity is a lot harder than access. Although the law is clear about students with any kind of learning or physical disability having equal access to the same educational opportunities as children, as normal children. What are schools in Dubai to be more mindful of when working closely with the families of students of determination, when looking at possibly reintroducing these children back into school?
I think for some, especially thinking of some of our higher needs children, it is going to take a bit of time maybe, and I'm sure the families will want us to be really patient with them. Some days it might be a struggle for some parents to get their child to school, or some days they might have had a really difficult morning, and we all want to work together. I always think it's really important to build strong relationships with parents. They feel that they can talk to us. So, you know, some days I've had a parent call me in the middle of the day and say, oh, this has happened, I can't get the child in. Maybe if they can speak to a familiar adult on the phone and we can talk or explain about what things look like in schools so the parent can get them in, say, then that will always help. But I think on that point, you know, again, it's all preparation, talking to the children, making sure they understand what's going on. At the moment, it's hard, and I've said that to parents because they're constantly asking, what's school going to look like? Are we definitely going back? But we don't know that, and we can't prepare the children for, say, the blended approach and say, you know, some of your friends are going to be in, but some are coming later until we know. So as soon as we start to find definites out, we can inform the parents on that, and then they can speak to the children to prepare them, and we can look at the situation when we know a bit more.
Thank you, Sarah. And now if we should move over to teachers and support staff, what support or advice would you give to teachers and support staff in preparation for a school open?
I think if teachers receive pupil passports or IEPs, you know, the more that they can learn about these children coming into their classes, their likes, their interests, their strengths, then the more they can put into place. I know if they can get in over the holidays, maybe create little workstation areas for children that need them, or maybe create like personalised reward charts or individual timetables for children that need them. If that's all ready for the child on day 1, then these sort of things are going to help the transition. Also, some children who have individual learning support assistants that will be going forward with them. You know, it's really important for the teachers to speak to them and understand that they do know the children really well, and that they're the best bet to go for to ask for help, or what can I do to help this child feel comfortable or happy about coming back to school if there are any issues. Also, a lot of free courses at the moment, you know, because of the situation. There's so much free CPD going around. If anyone is interested in anything particular, they can email me and I can point them in the right directions for some really good courses.
Thank you. And now a more personal question for yourself. Skill sets for teachers working with children of determination. The rewards are many working with children of determination. but for anyone looking into starting a career specializing in working with SEN students, what should he or she be mindful of going into this profession? What skill set is particularly sought after to best support the learning pathway SEN student?
Okay. So I think anybody who works with students or children of determination, it's important to realise that things don't always go to plan. If you're quite sensitive, then maybe it might be difficult. You know, you need to be able to be flexible, to be able to quick to respond to changes, and also not take things personally. You might have a few really good days, and then you might have a bad day, and you might be questioning why. But it's important to just realise that that's how it happens. And while the rewards are so great, we're always going to have those challenging days as well. I think anybody you know can support children if they're passionate and enthusiastic. It started with me like that when I started working for the charity. I started doing it alongside my course, and then as soon as I'd done a little bit of work with these children, I never wanted to go back into you know, teaching again without the special needs, because it was so rewarding for me. I think as a person, you need to be have a good sense of humour, be really kind, fun, all those sorts of things. You need to be able to be silly, and definitely have a good sense of humour.
Thank you so much. We're just going to touch base on a couple of the live questions that we received here. If I could have some rapid responses from your end. So if we go on to this one. This is from Jibin. How can we make sure about the resource requirements in back to school mode, that they are reasonable and easily accessible during the transition among the diversity of learner interests?
How can we what? Sorry.
How can we make sure about the resource requirements in the back to school mode, that they are reasonable and easily accessible during the transition among diversity of learner interests?
So for me, I've been sending things home, individual timetables, reward charts, things like that. All of these can be shared with the new teachers, and they can really quickly print things off and make things. Some really good things online that have become available. So I've started making symbols on widget, as that's all free now as well, to help teachers. And I'm just going to put a lot of stuff on our OneDrive for teachers to pull resources off. So that's another really good way to prepare if you start making use of everything that's free at the moment, or pay for some things and just store it all, bank it all up, and then I'm going to whack it all on the OneDrive, and then teachers can make the most of that. And we'll have physical resources that will move with the children and in all the classrooms anyway.
Fantastic. There's a question here from Marchetta. She's wondering about, have you considered transportation issues as well? I haven't really thought about that. A lot of our children, I think, come in with, we don't really have many children on the bus at our school. A lot of our children come in with families or drivers, so I think that that'll be an issue on the buses, really. Yeah, yeah. And lastly, let's see. You talked about the support for teachers. Have you considered who comprises of the MDT for each student, taking into account the new school staff that will be transforming as well? I think at our school we're really lucky, as we have a lot of staff staying next year, so we're already starting to think about, you know, which children would be best placed with which staff. So we don't actually have new teachers, so that's not really something that I've thought about this year, as most of our staff are staying. We're only losing a couple. Yeah. Fantastic. I think that's about it. Thank you so much. I will now hand over to Nada. So over to Nada. Thank you. Your microphone.
Great, thanks Magnus. Thank you, Sarah, for that wonderful presentation, and thanks Magnus for facilitating that discussion. I know we're kind of coming up close to the 5 p.m. Cutoff time, so I would like to just bring your attention to our feedback through Menti, through the Menti platform. So you'll see there on your phones or on your screens my next question to you, and that is, overall, how satisfied were you with the quality of the content of the webinar, the structure of the webinar, and the presenter and her preparedness in responding to the questions? So if you don't mind, I'll just ask for your feedback there. That would be absolutely awesome. We're always trying to improve these webinars week on week to ensure that we bring you the content that you find relevant and something that can help you in your roles as educators during these unprecedented times.
If you can share with us the presentation, Nada.
Yeah, I'll just hold on a little bit longer just so I can get a few more responses. Okay, thank you. And remember, using menti.com is completely anonymous. And we've seen a lot of schools also take on this tool and use it as an engagement mechanism with their own students. We've found it particularly a fun way to engage with our fantastic listeners. And I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. So thank you to those 30 people that have responded so far. That's fantastic. I'll just now move on to my next question to you. What did you enjoy most about the webinar today? So I'll give you a couple of moments just to enter your thoughts there. Again, just so that we can get some contextual feedback, some qualitative feedback from you all to help us in our quality assurance of these sessions. Now, I understand that you're all very, very busy people, and it's absolutely fine if you do need to go. But for those that can stay on for another 5 more minutes, would be extremely appreciated. So this was our 12th What Works X webinar. We've had over 1,500 people attend these sessions over the last 2 months. So the engagement has been truly, truly unbelievable, and it's been really heartwarming to know that so many schools and so many educators want to volunteer their time and their stories to the What Works X platform. And so many other educators are so keen to come online and learn from other schools, or just even validate what they're doing in their own schools. So we've got some great comments coming through through the platform. So the content was clear and the case studies were really helpful. Getting prepared for possible scenarios when schools do eventually go back. I see someone else had some technical difficulties, so it wasn't just us. So that's absolutely fine. So this session has been recorded and can be accessed through the In This Together website, which I will provide the details for in a minute. But we have recorded all our sessions, so you're more than welcome to go back and listen to the sessions all again. So we've got 12 sessions up there by tomorrow, and you'll be able to not only view it, but also share it with others within your own school if you've found a particular webinar quite beneficial. So thank you everyone for your feedback there. That's great. Okay, and just I'd love to know your feedback on this one. So now you've seen this webinar. what will be the first thing, what will be the first action you take to support your students' return to school? Will be to speak to the senior leadership team and assess what the whole of school approach is, and then adapt it for students of determination. Identify children who may need support. Communicate with parents early and provide support there. So some of that information Sarah was talking about over the summer, are there things that parents can do over the summer to prepare their children to come back to the physical school space? Or is it to support the transition process? Will you put together videos, information sheets for your students and their families? Or do you have some other ideas? We're always interested to hear other ideas as well, and you'll be able to share that on the next slide. Mental health and well-being is definitely a big area that I believe schools will need to consider when students and families go back to school for all students. So there should be an inclusive response as well there. All right, fantastic. Thank you so much for that. And I hope the webinar has given you some ideas, or it has inspired you to try something new. And this is where we'd like you to share with us what other things or other ways you could do to support your students returning to physical school. Again, I'll just give you a few more moments there to share. And this is a fantastic opportunity for everyone on the call today. I think we've had around almost 150 people join us. So it'd be great to get 150 ideas here, but feel free to list any ideas or anything that you're doing currently in your school, or actions or ideas that maybe you've been inspired by what Sarah had to say today and would like to share those ideas. So there's a lot of listening that needs to be done, blended learning and a blended learning approach with some or all of your students, support groups. I really like that idea. I think, you know, when students and families do go back to a new normal, that support groups for families, for students is a great idea there. So thank you for that. The social stories, that was a wonderful idea that Sarah did put forward. Thank you so much. Yeah, giving them time to settle down. Perhaps it's not, you know, first day back, it's time to assess your mathematical and literacy skills. Maybe it is about time to focus on the student well-being and to allow them to have those social connections with their friends and teachers, focusing time on that. And Sarah, you also mentioned towards the end that you were happy to share your email, and if that's still the case, feel free just to enter your email in the Q&A chat so people have access to that. And you also mentioned the widget platform. If you have a website address for that, I think some of our viewers who are not aware of widget might like to have a look at being a free resource. Thanks, Sarah.
Just typing it in now.
Great, fantastic.
Is that to everybody? I think everyone should be able to see it now.
Yep, thank you so much. Okay, and we're just on our last slide now. So this is the In This Together website that I mentioned earlier. Over here, you'll find a repository of free resources, not only from the UAE and Dubai, but also internationally. There's many companies and organizations out there that have provided free resources to the education community. The resources are arranged by students, for teachers, and for parents. And as I mentioned, if you scroll down to the bottom of that page, you will find all the previously recorded What Works X webinars. So please feel free to check that one out, and you'll also find upcoming webinars listed there as well. Now, I found something really fantastic today on Twitter, and I don't know if you've seen this, but this has come from the Heartland School, and one of their teachers was surprised on his birthday. So hopefully the sound comes through. Let me know, Maya, if it doesn't. So let's have a look. Sorry, let me go back.
Kung saan sto pisay po here? What's up? Who can it be? Who can it be? Kung saan sto pisay po here? What's up? Who can it be? Who can it be? It's age. Una vez, otra vez. You can come again, Kristen. Right, go around again. That's okay. That's a D. Daniel. Hey, lovely. You can go again if you want, yeah?
So I just found that absolutely adorable. Yeah, you can see me. Yeah. So that was just something that I wanted to share with you all. There's still a lot of hope and positivity and so much kindness in our world. And for that teacher in Dubai to be surprised by his students was just really, really heartwarming. So for anyone whose birthday it is today, a very warm happy birthday from KHDA to you. And from my home to yours, stay safe, be well, and we hope to catch you and meet up again at our next webinar, which will be on Monday and on Thursday next week, same time, same place. Be safe, and thank you so much, everybody. Bye-bye.